Welcome back to the Closure House. I'm your host, Jesska, and tonight, Joyce takes us through her journey of letting go and learning to trust herself again. Her story is one of resilience, truth, and the kind of growth that only comes when you decide you deserve better. All right, Joyce. So, for listeners meeting with you for the first time, how would you describe family today?
Let's see. Out of 4 kids, I'm the second born. So we'll say middle child. Came from a family of immigrants. So we were like the firstborn here. So I think my parents were trying to acclimate to American standards and from what they grew up with. Basically, when I was growing up, my parents were not abusive at all. Not at all. Well, I can't say at all. They did have, we got the occasional spanking and everything like that. Probably like how kids in the 80s were pretty much raised. I did notice that now as an adult, I could kind of see and look back at how that kind of shaped us a little bit or shaped myself a little bit. I could say that looking back when I was growing up, I think whenever I would make a decision of any sort, my dad would always come by and tell me that wasn't the right decision. You should have done this or you should have done that. Growing up like that with trying to make decisions for myself and then even getting into the teen years and the young adult years of somebody who would always tell me, that wasn't right. You shouldn't have done that. This is what you should have done. You should have asked me. Kind of fostered some sort of dependence with me and my dad.
You didn't want to make the wrong choice.
I didn't want to make the wrong choice. And then I also believed that my dad knew better, always. When that came, and I had a good relationship with my mom. She kind of seemed to be kind of like there if she needed me. She did work a lot. She pretty much held the entire family as far as financially together. My father was in and out of jobs. It was hard to find that stability, but my mom was a stability as far as financially. The thing, she was able to send us to private school, gave us like music lessons, that kind of, gave us a stable home. So then getting into like relationships, like love relationships or, that sort of thing, I found out looking back now that it was always the men that chose me. It wasn't me choosing them. But
Yeah.
then that kind of goes into like, they knew better than me. They knew I needed them. They knew they could help me. They knew that they were making the decisions for me. And that's only looking back where I could see that. Those relationships didn't work. A lot of them were very tragic. The very first one started with verbal and then turned to physical abuse. The second one turned into financial abuse. When I was in college, I found myself with a partner that left me in $40,000 of credit card debt. Then the third one, thought I was doing better. Again, he chose me, became persistent, and then I ended up in a relationship with him. And he left me um, the wedding and basically left me in a house that was meant for 2 people to pay for. And then I came into my ex-husband, found out after 8 years of being with him, he was a serial cheater, basically lied a lot to me, my family, my kids, everybody. And he didn't really have any qualms about it. It didn't bother him. He could lie to the women, me, my dad, my mom, my kids, everybody in a day and not worry about it. Very selfish. But at the same time, he was covering that up with looking like a really nice person. Brought food to my work for my coworkers, hugged
Mm-hmm.
me, let me know like, oh, let me hold you for 5 minutes. So I haven't seen you all day. Showered me with gifts on Valentine's Day. And my parents loved him.
It sounds like a lot of people would really love him because he's showing up as this charming person and he looks like he's treating you really well.
Exactly. When I found out, it wasn't like I found out in small amounts. I found out kind of like after the first ball dropped, I was like very hyper vigilant and I found out a lot of things, a lot of really sordid things, multiple dating sites, financial abuse. I was working extra. He was telling me he was taking money out of his 401k, but he had a secret bank account where he could take the ladies out, lied to my parents and said, oh, he was playing football and couldn't pick the kids up because it was late. And then my parents would say, oh, no, 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 don't pick them up. I'll watch them, and that was basically an excuse he could stay out later while I was at work.
Yeah.
Okay, so that ended. Okay, so my parents knew exactly what he had done. and everything. And then I fell into the relationship that I am with now, who is now my husband. So my dad never liked him. I could tell. He never liked him. He never accepted him as my husband. He and I thought maybe that was because of the distrust that happened with the relationship right before him. Like my
Yeah.
dad would never trust any, but kind of went on. And now I have two kids that I had with my ex that now we're trying to come to a new family. We're in this new family. COVID happens. Me and my husband now had a child together who was diagnosed with autism. There was a lot of stress and just trying to put the family together. I think in retrospect, I'm looking back and we were struggling. We were really
Yeah.
struggling. My husband now is more on the strict side. I was more on the lenient side. We were trying to find the best parenting strategy. And then we were coming into like conflict with that. We were in a bad place, me and my husband now. We had tried therapy and everything. I think it was until when my daughter, now I have a daughter and a son with my ex that were living with me. When my daughter turned 15 and she started liking boys, and we had kind of seen her grades drop, and we questioned her about it. We found out that she had a boyfriend. My husband now basically said, "You can't have a boyfriend if your grades are dropping." I
Hmm.
mean, that kind of makes sense because her grades had been like pretty much all A's, maybe an occasional B. And he just basically said that. She kind of threw some tantrum, went upstairs. Next day, she showed us she had put cuts on her arm. So she went to we called the police and everything because we just didn't want that to go unreported. And she ended up staying at like a mental place for kids for about a week. I think that's what the wake up call with me and my now husband was. We were fighting. We were not getting on the same page about raising the kids a certain way. They weren't taking it very well from him because he was like this new person that came in.
Yeah.
We asked for help. We went to family therapy after this happened with my daughter. Family therapy, I also started communicating more with my ex, basically, kind of like, hey, watch her when she's with you on the weekends and, this and that. My parents, also saw that we were struggling. And of course, like I said, I never got from my dad that he liked um, my husband now, but he loved my ex-husband.
Yeah. Which is so hard to understand because he did so many things wrong.
Exactly. When my daughter turned 16, we found out that, see, things had settled for about a year and everything was pretty calm. And then when she turned 16, almost like a year later to the exact, we found out that her grades were dropping. They were in the 30s. She was seeing a boy. She was leaving campus. She was in high school. She was leaving campus. She was lying to us. And we found out that she was doing high risk behaviors. So what did I do as a parent? I took her phone, I took her computer away, I grounded her, I took the door off of her room because she was threatening to cut herself.
Yeah.
She jumped out of the second story window and called the police when I took her computer and phone away, and then said that told the police that I would choked her, which was not true. This led to CPS coming to my house,
Mhm.
interviewing me, my husband, and the kids. It put us at a lot of risk. My husband has a job where he's a police officer, and he has a job where if something's reported to our house, it's going to be reported to his work. I am a pediatric nurse. If there was a report that I choked a child, I would be at risk for losing my job because I work with children.
Well, I really want to understand the impact though, because you're trying to parent her well, make sure she's on the right track. But for her, sometimes people take doors off and do these things when they're just trying to control their kids. There's other times where parents do these things because they're trying to keep the kids safe. You already know she had a history of cutting, that other things were happening. So you step in to do this and she fabricates this story saying you strangled her when you didn't.
This is true. So she would go off to her dad and tell him these stories. Then she would go to my parents sometimes because I was very active seeing my parents. I would see my mom almost every weekend. I would call, I checked up on them because they were getting older. I always checked up on my dad. They helped me take care of the kids sometimes. And this is the thing, they did help me because when I was a single mom for so long, they did help me raise my kids when I went to work. The thing is, I think there was a cutoff point here where they could get to be grandparents, but I think they really overstepped as far as thinking they got a vote to how I treated or raised my children, or how me and my husband chose to raise my children. And I did kind of get a sense of this when my dad kept on checking on me. Did you put her doors back on? Did you put her doors back on? And every single time I would see him, I would say, not yet. She can get her doors back, but she has to earn them back. She has to like not be skipping school and not, not be seeing this boy who was very harmful. He was not just a regular boyfriend. He was actually telling her to do these things to hurt me, to get CPS involved, to get her counselor involved. I did know when my dad would say, did you put her doors back up? And I said, no. And then he would say, you tell me when your husband's not there and I'm going to go and put those doors back.
So what involvement did he think that your husband had that he wouldn't be there, and then he'd come over and put the doors back up?
I have no idea, but I think I think I got the sense that my dad didn't really respect our home. He had access to our home. My parents had the key to our house. They could come over at any time. They could take the kids at any time. It was very open, but he really overstepped his bound. So I didn't know this, but I guess my ex was working on them, basically. So back in 2023, I found out, not through my parents, but I found out that my ex took my parents out to eat with the kids and his new wife. I thought that was very odd. Like, they've never gone out to eat. My parents know what he's done to me and the family. They know what kind of person he is. But their excuse was, "Oh, well, I just wanted to see this lady. I wanted to see, if the kids, this new person." And so we went out to eat with him. I found out through my brother, not, and my parents didn't tell me.
Yeah, that's a lot of betrayal.
It's a large betrayal. I said, like, the kids don't know what he did to me. The new lady doesn't know what he did to me, but they knew. My parents know what he did to me. He risked my health. He risked everything. He stole money, everything, the lies, the multiple lies. Um, but they went out to eat with them. And then when I confronted my parents, I asked them, why did you do that? And they said, well, they just wanted to see the lady and see, how she was. And I'm like, you think you could get all of that information out of like one meeting? Most people put their best foot forward with those things. I don't think I said, nobody's saying to be mean to him. I mean, yes, go stand on the lawn and say, hey, how are you doing? And, but you can decline when somebody asks you to go out to eat. I found out my dad offered to pay for the meal as well. So I guess like
He didn't communicate it either, is what I hear you saying. You found out about it.
I found out about it when my brother, who doesn't live in the state that we live in, had happened to speak to my mom and found out. And he said, you need to call and tell her right now what you did, which they didn't. I found out through my brother.
Yeah.
So that's why I confronted them. Other things were working out in the background where then about 2 weeks after they went out to eat with my ex, I got papers served to me that I had emergency orders to remove my children from the home for physical and verbal abuse. Which is not true. So we had to go to court and we had to get a lawyer. Now this is now $50,000 of money that we didn't have. $1,000 that could have been used for my special needs kid, $50,000 where I didn't have to work extra to make this money to pay the lawyers. There's a lot of financial stress that came with this. My parents didn't call me. They knew I was, served with papers. They didn't call me. They didn't do anything. When I did confront my parents and that time where I said, like, why did you go out to eat? I said, are you going to go to his Thanksgiving or are you going to go to my Thanksgiving? Make a choice. And my dad said, we're going to be neutral.
Well,
Okay.
what did that mean then? Because that didn't feel neutral.
I accepted it that they would stay out of it. Then my dad said, stay neutral. But during the court during this whole custody battle, we were able to get an amicus on our side, not on our side. An amicus lawyer is basically not a lawyer for my ex and not a lawyer for me. It's a lawyer for the kids to kind of basically find out the background information because he was like, there's more to this story. Okay, so we got the amicus. Well, the amicus was interviewing all of us separately, I guess over the phone. And the case was actually going towards mine. It's like, okay, the amicus was like, yeah, I think your ex wants child support. It looks like he's tired of paying the child support. But then the amicus called me one time and said, I spoke to a party that does not want to be mentioned, but they kind of said that the kids don't like your new husband. And I was like, what? A party that doesn't want to be mentioned? Who could that possibly be? So after the amicus spoke to my parents, it started going towards my ex's side. So I confronted my parents again, and my mom said, I'm an old lady. I need to forgive people. I'm like, yeah, but you don't, if somebody is proven to be a snake, you don't go out to eat and break bread with them and help them with their case and everything. So I think after that, I pretty much decided I'm not going to speak to my parents anymore, which was very heartbreaking because I was very active with them. I saw them all the time. I brought the kids over because I didn't have a relationship with my grandparents because they were overseas. But I
Mhm.
was like, wow, I wanted my kids to have a relationship. On a weekend, we weren't doing anything. I would bring the kids over. We would swing in their front yard. I would order pizza. I'd spend time with my parents. I'd sit down. So this was a big betrayal, a huge
Yeah.
betrayal.
So going into this, you had more contact than most people that I speak with. Like a lot of times they're, talking to their parents here or there, but like you guys are talking all the time. They have
All
access
the
to your
time.
house. They're with the kids. So
Yes.
that was a major loss.
It was, and it broke me. At the same time, the temporary orders for the child support case said, hey, temporary orders, well, why don't your 16-and-a-half-year-old go with the father, and then my 11-year-old at the time son would stay with me. Let's see how these kids do. And actually, after 6 months, both of them did fine, right? So if this was emotionally and abusive, household, why is my son doing okay? Right. So anyway, I think when it came down to the final mediation where me and my ex had to try to come to agreement, I tried to keep my son. He was like, no, I want him too. I was kind of left like, what are we going to do? My lawyer told me it was going to be $80,000 if we go to court. And I
Oh,
basically said, what is my life going to be? Working and working and working and not spending time with my special needs son and not spending time with my son here. My life is not going to be what I want it to be. And I knew my son missed my daughter quite a
yeah.
bit because they grew up together. So I came to the decision to let him go over there.
Yeah. So
Uh,
let him go live with him and see how it goes. And then that way you're not burdened by trying to fight a battle that sounded like it was possible to lose anyway.
I did, on those temporary orders, I was going to pick up my daughter like every other weekend. It was like I was going to pick her up on the odd weekends and my ex would have the kids on so they could see each other. But the very first time I brought my daughter to my house, the very first time, she brought in a recording device that I found in the bed. I didn't know it was a recording device. My husband figured out what it was. I thought it was a battery charger or something. My husband now put it in and put it in the plugged it to the computer, and it basically had my daughter saying, my dad told me to put this in my bra to record my mom in case she says anything that will land her in jail. So, yeah, that was quote unquote. So, my ex was basically implanting my daughter with a recording device to catch anything that I would say, which they would catch nothing because I don't say anything. I told them the only thing they would catch on that is what kind of cookies do you want to bake? Do you want the crispy kind? Because we were trying to do fun things on the weekend. Yeah. So my parents, I guess, I don't know. Not in communication with, that's the kind of person they chose to side with. This kind of person that would implant their daughter with a recording device, further alienating her from me as in mom is the bad guy. I am the good guy.
And this is ringing over and over because they're seeing she's also going to dinner, that time with your parents. So it starts looking like you're the bad person in the equation.
Where I was just trying to parent, yeah, and they just didn't like my parenting style.
Well, your style also changed too, because after the marriage, you're like, okay, I'm more lenient, he's more strict. So we're trying to find this balance. So they're not used to being able to be like, Mom, can I do this? And it'd be like, no.
Exactly, exactly. And this is how kind of I saw I did have an older daughter before I had these two with my ex. And she at the same time was living with me and comforting me through this whole thing. Comes to find out that the agreement with her living with me at the same time all of this was happening was that she would go to school. She was 31 years old. She kept on stopping school, starting school, stopping. So the agreement, when you come to live with me, you have to stay in school and go straight. You've had too many breaks, too many hiatuses. This is the condition. And during the same time all this was happening, I found out that she was not going to school.
Yeah.
So everything was kind of coming down on me. Everything, like my parents, lawyers. At the same time, we're going to therapy, trying to like we're going to family therapy. My husband now got his own therapist. I got my own therapist. We found out there was underlying anxiety between us both, which
Hmm.
then got treated. So all this is coming down. I find out my oldest daughter's not going to school. So I basically was like, I'm being so nice to all these people. I'm being so good. I'm trying to be a good daughter, a good mother
Yeah.
and everything is coming down on me. So I basically made the decision to tell my oldest daughter, you need to move out.
Yeah.
You need to
And
move
do it
out.
on your own because you had some rules. This is what we decided for you. And you're deciding to take a different path. So you'll have to stand on your own 2 feet.
And after that, we don't have communication. So kind of at the same time, I have been estranged from my oldest daughter. I've been estranged from my parents. And now I'm estranged from my 16-and-a-half-year-old, who's now 18.
Mhm.
I was not invited to prom. I was not invited to graduation.
That's really hurtful. It's actually heartbreaking because it's like you put all this time in and you miss all these moments that you were like really looking forward to.
Yes, and I had to yeah, it's very painful. At the same time, raising a level 2 autistic child. Actually, right now, when I was telling my parents and trying to, like, plead my case during all this, I was like, "We're going to therapy. We're doing this. We're doing this. We're trying to make it better." The therapist actually told us, "Hey, they're not taking orders from your husband who's more strict. Maybe you need to step up. You need to be the one making the orders, and he can support you." And then that's what I did. But basically, it's like my husband coming into the family basically saw that I was so lenient with my oldest daughter.
Mhm.
And you see what happened with that. You see what happened with that. She just took advantage of everything, you
Yeah.
know? And so I was like, okay, well, I will try to change this with my two children that I have living with me. And we were in the process of doing that. And actually, things got better. When the lawyer amicus had asked the kids, how are things at home? And they said, it's actually been better. They were actually saying things were getting better, but nobody wanted to listen to me.
Yeah.
I found out during this whole thing, I found out what enmeshment was.
Mhm.
I also found out what triangulation was because
Yeah.
while the kids were with my parents, my mom would start watching YouTube videos on narcissism and start sending them to me. My teenage daughter started calling my husband now a narcissist. Triangulation, my dad started getting my brother and sister involved and said, you need to call your sister. Basically to tell me I needed to get a divorce.
Yeah. And what had he
Yes.
done outside of the kids not liking him and them later not liking him? Had he done anything else that was like they would not like him for?
Basically just being strict. And like I said, we were having issues, basically undiagnosed anxiety issues. And I don't know if people understand anxiety doesn't always come out as being timid and shaking and whatever. Sometimes it comes out in anger and anger in a way that you don't have time to process it in your head. It's more of a reactive thing. When you're having anxiety, both of us ended up having that same kind of anxiety, which kind of made a bad combination. So there were things that happened, like maybe my son would do something and then my husband now would be a little bit too reactive to it. Yes. And maybe yell a little bit. But then,
Think the cheating, the lying, the
oh, no,
taking
no.
money, having a separate bank account, like that's the part that people don't understand about enmeshment. It's like people are all at the same emotional intelligence level. And anybody who rises above to say, hey, this situation's not going well. and I wanna change it. So I'm gonna change the
Yes.
way I'm parenting because I want more success. I want this to feel different than before, and everybody wants you to walk in line and be in the same space that you were in, you know? So it really gets challenging because everybody who is, like, not falling in line is the problem. So if your husband's strict and he's like, "Yeah, we're not doing it that way. We're taking this door off," then he's the
Mhm.
problem. And if you're like, "Hey, I'm gonna keep the door off because I wanna make sure she's safe," then you're the problem because you're not doing what they want you to do.
Exactly. My brother and sister, who also live in the same town as us, during this whole court process, they didn't call me. They didn't say, how are things going and everything. My brother did get on the phone with me when all this was going down and basically said, "I talked to your daughter and she does not want to live with you." And I'm thinking, where are they backing me up saying she's a good mom? She spends time with you. She goes to every, program. She sits with you. She takes you out to the movies. She this and that. I was an active mom. And I
Yeah.
did different than my parents did. My parents never sat down with me and asked me how I felt about anything. So I tried to change certain things and nobody was backing us up. And basically, my brother ended up sounding when he was on the phone with me almost exactly like my dad. Basically, "Oh, you know how dad is. And, he just cares about the kids. He cares about the kids more than you." And I'm like, it still doesn't give him the right to interject into my life. So I think that looking back, I think, I have a husband now, and my dad was not having as much control over me. And that was some of the arguments that I would be having with my husband now because we would come to an agreement with something and then my dad would get in my ear and then things would change and my husband's like, "Wait a second, I thought we agreed on this." And I didn't realize that I was letting an earful from my dad. I've come through a lot of growth with this because I basically was questioned myself why I've accomplished a lot of things in my life. I had a baby when I was 19 years old. I got through nursing school. I became the youngest manager at a big hospital for the pediatric center at 32. I've run marathons. I've done a lot of things. I've gotten my first house when I was 27. Everything I've done. But why do I feel like a little girl when I talk to my dad? Why do I cower down when my dad talks? And I just feel like I need to listen and I don't speak up for myself and I don't have a voice. And I think that's how I was when I was growing up. Everybody knew better than me. Listen to the guy. He knows what he's talking about. And I mean, like I said, my dad's not a bad person. He's not. And I'm sure he has some demons that he grew up with that caused him to be this way. But it trickled down. It trickled down into how I felt. He would a lot of times when he got really mad at us, I remember spit, like his face getting real close to me and spit flying out of his mouth. And he's has his finger and he's sticking it on my forehead saying, "You're stupid. You're
Mhm.
stupid." No,
Yeah.
that wasn't all the time. But then when he wasn't having a good day, it would be like that.
Yeah.
And, I think some of that got ingrained in me. Now
That's why I mentioned, like, you not wanting to make the wrong choice. So, like,
yeah,
they create this dependency where it's like, if I need to make a decision, I need to come to you to do it
exactly.
because you know best. And when you don't, then it's like you're defying me. And the only other factor is this new husband. So it's like he's making her do that. So I see how
Exactly.
that got tied into narcissism there. Right? But it really formulates your decisions, and that's what this whole podcast is about. It's about, like, if your dad makes you feel like you can't make good decisions on your own, and then you end up in relationships where people are like, "Do what I'm saying," it makes it so hard for you to figure out your own identity or what you want, because you only have the example of what they did, and you don't wanna repeat the cycles that they had, but I want you to know you can still end up in positions where you have this conflict with the kids, even when you were trying your best.
Yes, yes. I think what really made me I'm a pretty healthy person. I've never been sick. If I ever call in sick for work, it's probably because my kids are sick.
Yeah.
A lot of times I don't call in sick for anything. But during this time, my body started breaking apart. I
Mhm.
had a retinal detachment on my left eye. I was blind. I basically had 5 surgeries to try to correct it during the same time as the court case, the same time as my oldest daughter, not talking to me and being kicked out, my parents betraying me, my younger daughter not talking to me. I was blind and I
Yeah.
had 5 surgeries and each surgery wouldn't correct it. So I'd have another surgery and another surgery. surgery, and I got cellulitis on my face that wouldn't go away. And then I got shingles.
Mhm.
They say when you're under 50 and you get shingles, you're going through a lot of stress.
Yeah.
All those things were, and it just kind of was a wake up call, like, I'm going to die. I'm going to die with all this stress. Yeah, I need to let something go. So I let my parents go, and I let my eldest daughter go, and I let my 17, 18-year-old go. And I do have things now. I have my things are positive. My husband and I, we struggled. And when we look back at things now, we look at each other and said, we should have broken up. We should have broken up. But we hung on to each other, and then we had the autistic child, and then we came to an agreement like, okay, I could get another boy. We could break up. I could get another boyfriend. But when my kid is in the back seat hitting his head and screaming, what is that? Only me and him, me and my husband now would be able to tolerate, understand it. He's an excellent father to him. I was trying to explain that to my parents that we did have issues. We did have problems.
Yeah, as does every relationship.
But we wanted to change. And it took a while, but we got to the point where like, we're going to change because we need to stay together. And at this point, I can't remember the last time I fought with my husband. We are a case where when there's a problem, we present it to each other and we're not trying to kill each other. During that, we listen to each other, and we have evolved to a point where our therapist called us and asked us, did I do something? You haven't made any appointments. And I'm like, we're good. We're good.
Yeah, we're figuring it out. So you're like using the tools that you learn in therapy. You guys are applying them. The relationship's getting better.
I was trying to tell my parents that, and they didn't want to listen. I was trying to tell my brother that, he didn't want to listen. Nobody wanted to listen. And it was like I was talking and talking, and for what? Like if people have already made their decision about something,
Yeah.
you know, when my ex-husband cheated on me, there was a big cognitive dissonance. He was such a great guy. Everybody loved him. He was so affectionate. He was this and that. So there was a cognitive dissonance when I found out that he was a serial cheater. I had to do everything in my mind to convince me. I had to like see it for fact. I had to see the evidence for me to believe that he was actually this kind of person. My parents basically just heard what my 16-year-old daughter was saying and just believed her. I was like, why didn't they come to me and ask me? And why did they befriend my ex?
Empower your 16-year-old at the time's voice so much while always diminishing yours.
Exactly. Exactly. Teenagers, I've worked with teenagers. I mean, I'm not saying they're lying. There might just be a grain of salt to it, though. I mean, you have to kind of investigate when teenagers are saying, because they're very emotional and exaggerative sometimes, and you really have to kind of look into it. Nobody asked me. Nobody asked me. And then when I'm trying to tell them, they weren't listening. They had already come to a decision of what needed to be done. I do want to touch on that, what you said when I told you my parents were, my mom was saying that my ex is a narcissist. And I do want to, because this is all in the mental health right now, that everybody is naming everybody a narcissist right now. When you're not, if you are not an expert to clinically diagnose parents or kids or whatever as narcissistic, you shouldn't be saying they're a narcissist. I do believe that when my husband and I were in the trenches and we were going to therapy, whenever he would walk out to go to the bathroom, I would tell, is he a narcissist? Tell me right now while he's in the bathroom. And counselor after counselor said, no, he's not. He's not. You can have some traits here and there, and that could be coming from childhood traumas and that are presenting as narcissistic. But he's coming to therapy. He's trying to get better.
Narcissists don't come to therapy, not on their own. They will if they're losing something, like the cheating ex. Like a lot of times, those are the behaviors of a narcissist, or people who they kind of manipulate and use people, and it's trending. So I hear that all the time. People are like, this person's a narcissist. But when there are kids involved, if they're not diagnosed as a narcissist, like even now, I won't say your ex is a narcissist. He's got some traits, but I can't say that because I don't know him. I haven't clinically evaluated him. I haven't sat with him. So if you're saying that, and kids are so impressionable, now they're looking it up and they're like, oh, he did do this and he did.
Well, I was saying my daughter was saying that my now husband is a narcissist, not my ex. She loves her dad.
Right. But now they're putting the correlation together for your now husband, thinking that he's a narcissist because
Yeah.
they're being fed some of this stuff and it's online and it's trending and
Yes, and my mother was sending me little, snippets from YouTube, and, I mean, my husband was seeing, what is she sending you these for?" You know? And they were against us. They were against us, and, I mean, I have heard if you're going to be outside of the relationship, like, in-laws or whatever, you can either choose to contribute or to contaminate. You can either contribute or contaminate, and I believe they chose to contaminate. They didn't wanna see us succeed. They wanted to stick with the narrative that I chose my husband now over my kids. And that was never it. We were trying to make a family, and we can fully admit that we struggled.
yeah.
We can fully admit that because we're human. And sometimes things don't get fixed. When you say, I want it fixed by January, things don't get fixed. When you're going to therapy, it gets unpeeled very slowly, like an onion, basically.
The contribution that they had too. I mean, I'm thinking about even in childhood, you struggling to make decisions, right? Because you're like,
Yes,
I don't want to be wrong. And my dad's telling me that I'm doing it wrong and I need to do it this way. And then you go out and you finally make a decision. And now everybody's like, you made the wrong choice.
exactly.
That's a lot of pressure.
Yes. I am very, very sad. My dad's birthday just passed and my mom's birthday in October just passed, and I just can't come to calling them or talking to them or even reaching out. I'm still working through that. Um 'Cause they're getting older, and it's just very hard to forgive what they've done.
Yeah, especially when they don't believe maybe that they've done anything wrong. And this is
Exactly.
the hard part about family dynamics. It's like everybody has their own perspective of what's happening, and nobody knows your husband like you, right?
Exactly, exactly. There was something where I think was happening when I would just hear little snippets from certain family members, and my parents decided to move out of the country to live on the retirement, you know.
Mm.
Some of my family members, that my niece, who doesn't know anything that happened, texted me and said, "Hey, I know that things happened between you and your and grandparents. I don't know, they must have hurt your feelings or something, but can you please reach out to grandma because grandpa wants to stay here in the United States and grandma wants to go to the other country. Can you please like reach out and maybe if you say that maybe they'll stay." And I okay. You know what I told my niece?
What was
It's
that?
none of it's none of my business. That's between my mom and my dad. It's between your grandparents because I don't know what they have discussed. I don't know, what the plan is. And it's none of my business. And I know when to stay out of things that I have very little knowledge of because the intimate moments and the intimate conversations between them are between them. But for some reason, people thought that they could overstep into my relationship. You my dad my husband will stand up for me for anything. Like, if you get into a bind, you want my husband on your side because he will fight for you. But at the same time, there was a time where my kids I was having a hard time with my kids, and my parents came over and said, "We'll take them for a day or 2." This is before I got served with papers. My dad took them, my mom took my son and my daughter, and they were staying there, and then I'd call back after 3 days, and I'm like, "Hey, can I come pick them up right now?" And "No, just leave them here. They're happy here, this and that." And I would start crying about it. I would cry and I felt like I didn't have any power. And then I'd call again and say, "Can I have my kids? Can I come pick them up?" Mom, no, my mom said, "No, not right now. They're doing really good here. Well, your grandpa's taking them to school." I think it got into the 3rd week and my husband seeing me cry, and he's like, "This isn't right." So he called my dad and said, "You don't have legal authority over these children. They need to go back to their mom. You need to let them go, and you can't just hold them there." So my husband spoke up for me, and I can see how this could not land well with my father. And, it's just a guess of mine, but I think this is when things started brewing, and my ex-husband and him got into some collaboration on how to get the kids to stay with my ex. So, yeah.
How have you overcame some of what feels like betrayal from them?
It's not over yet because, like, I get the grief is coming in waves. when things happen or birthdays happen or holidays, but I have to choose respect over disrespect. I don't think that they're sorry for what they did, and I actually don't think they know how bad it was.
Yeah, it's almost like they have a totally different perception of what's happening, like we were discussing. So, what do you think it would take if you ever decided to repair the relationship, or they did? What do you think it would take?
I wouldn't even have to see an apology. I would just basically have like them to come to me and say, I know we didn't know everything, but I'm open to learning about what we didn't know and not cutting me off and telling me they know better, but just actually just actively listening if they wanted to know. Because right now, I mean, we're still going through it. This court case happened, but I still had to pick up an extra job to pay for everything. And so every single time I go off of a night shift from working and I have to go straight into a day shift job. And that's suffering because I have to because we have to pay. Custody cases, I don't know, are very expensive. They're way more expensive than divorce cases actually in some cases. They
Yeah.
go on for a long time and I'm still paying that. My parents have reached out to me. They have said happy birthday, but I didn't respond. I heard my dad tried calling me and I didn't pick up.
Yeah. I think the hardest part about no contact is that there's no real rules for it. It's like you have to make a decision based on how you feel at times. And anytime you have to make that decision, I always tell you, like, what do you want to get out of it? Because sometimes people are like, so and so reached out and I'm going to answer. And other times they're like, I'm never answering. I need an apology. So then I see two things happen. One, grief, right? And the second thing is, as people get older, I see people sometimes regret. Like they'll say, I really wish I would have talked to my mom. I wish I would have had this time. So it's kind of like, how do you know now how to make a decision about them?
I'm going to be It's kind of up in the air. I don't know. I've played some things in my head about maybe just giving them a call, but I kind of don't want them to know too much about what's going on in my life right now.
Yeah.
One of my aunts just died. She's around the same age as my dad. And thoughts came into my head like, what if I get that call
Yeah.
and we didn't fix this, but I don't even know how to? The level of betrayal is so high.
Yeah. And both can be just as difficult. Talking to them can be completely detrimental, and not talking to them can be completely detrimental as well because grief. And so, as you see all these things online about no contact, people are taking opposing sides and they'll tell you never talk to someone again. For me, I've been no contact with my family for a while. And one of the things that I don't do is I don't say I'll never speak to them again. This is just where I am now. Things could change, but it's important to know, like, what would you need to change? Because then it helps you formulate that decision. And then I would always be like, wanting to empower you to know you're going to make mistakes. And sometimes making a decision will be a mistake, and then you'll be able to handle it and get through it,
Right.
you
I
know?
feel like now that I don't have my dad, when my dad went out of my life, like I think I felt like a stress relieved and there was no more fighting in my house. The level of stress went from 10 to like 2 and immediately,
Yeah.
immediately.
Because he's not
So it
putting that
kind of
pressure on you to do what he thinks is best for you, because that's
right.
not going to be what's best for you. It's going to be what you think is best.
It also gave me the opportunity to like when my husband and I would come into a conflict, I'm like, I have nobody to go to. I have to fix this conflict. I have to stand up and say, this is this. I always felt like I had a pillow and to fall back on, and which I did after every failed relationship. I ran back to my dad. I ran back to my dad and I'm like, help me and this and that. And they did. I mean, like I said, they're not terrible parents. They did help. They helped me with my kids. They helped me with a lot of things. It's just that this kind of came down to a point, And I really honestly I don't know how to fix it. I think I'm like that. And I have the older daughter that I kicked out. I don't know how to fix it. I don't know how to fix it. The 18-year-old that just graduated, I sent her a card. I told her, I'm sorry, I'm not going to go to this graduation. I know you're graduating. I'm watching it online. I did see her graduate. It was just online. But I think now it's starting to make sense. You teach people how to treat you. You teach people how to treat you. And it just I'm not gonna stand for what they did, knowing fully well what kind of person my ex was. Now, he could be a great dad, but I mean, and you can have your opinion, like, but they really overstepped in a lot of ways, and
Yeah.
I don't think they have any regrets. And what I hear from the brother that does tell me a little bit about them, you're probably not gonna get an apology. That's what he said.
Yeah, well, it's hard to get an apology from people who don't see the world the way you're seeing it because they may feel like they know what's best. And if you're making a different decision, they may feel like your decision is wrong. But when you were talking about what to do, I think that's the like powerful part of your story is that a lot of people are in this boat where they're like, well, what do I do? Because I miss them and I want them in my
Yeah.
life, but I can't have them in my life like this. So maybe that's what we can talk about a little bit. Like, what do you do from here? And like, is there anything else you considered doing?
I think it would have to start with like a phone call, I guess. I'm not like a meet, but I honestly ask myself, are you ready? And I don't feel ready. I'm still going through it. There is a picture in my house of our entire family together. Guess who arranged that? It's a professional picture of my family all
Mhm.
together. And I pass by it all the time,
Yeah.
but I'm not ready to take it down because I still have hope,
Yeah.
that
And it
things
doesn't,
might
you don't,
change. Things might change. I don't know, but I do know that I'm not ready yet. My oldest daughter, though, I just want to throw that in. When I did try talking to her about kicking her out, I said, I've done a lot of things for you. She said, sounds like you're gaslighting me. And I said, she said, you owe me an apology. So I'm in the middle of things. I have parents that I don't talk to, and I have kids that I don't talk. I'm estranged from my kids. I'm estranged from my parents. I'm like right in the middle.
yeah.
My oldest daughter demands an apology from me. I need an apology from my parents. And I'm like, what is this? It's just like, I'm not going to give my daughter an apology, my oldest one. If I do apologize for anything, it'll be kind of set up like this. I apologize for having you too young. I apologize for not knowing how to be the perfect mother, being so young and making so many mistakes. I apologize for not knowing myself like I do myself now. I apologize for not making great decisions. I apologize for not picking the right father for you. I apologize for working so hard to give you things when I probably should have spent more time with you. Those are the kind of apologies. It's not going to be an apology I kicked you out because you didn't adhere to the rules of the house. It wouldn't be the apology that she would want. But I do know that we are all imperfect. And I think as long as people want to be curious about themselves and want to be better, always striving to be better and more knowledgeable about themselves and how they got into this place and to just do the healing,
Yeah.
I think that's okay. But
Also realizing perception. I think that as a therapist, that's one of the biggest things that I have to work through when I'm working with families is that what you intend to do and the result of what happens are two different things. So you can intend to empower her, put her out the house. It's like, hey, you didn't follow the rules. You got to follow the rules everywhere you go, or anybody will put you out. But here, you have to go. Go ahead, spread your wings and fly, right?
yes,
And
yes,
her look at it like sometimes maybe she's being abandoned or whatever's happening on her
yes,
side. I think when you have a conversation with people who have opposing views, you don't have to pull them into yours. Like you don't have to explain, oh, that I was trying to empower you. I'm trying to do this. It can become a burden when somebody's living with you and they're not following your rules because you still have a relationship and other kids. And I guess what I'm trying to say is when you're trying to fix it, a lot of times it's just really facilitating the conversation. Someone saying, you hurt me by doing this. A lot of times it's having to sit through things that you don't even feel you did. Like someone will say, you really hurt me by doing this and you had all good intentions. And it's like part of us has to give up a piece sometimes when we're repairing it to say, I'm sorry I hurt you, even though that wasn't my intent.
so I didn't realize that hurt you so much,
Yeah.
right, right. Yeah, someday I will reach out to my oldest daughter. And like I said, I've tried to reach out to the 18-year-old. I haven't reached out to my parents, but yeah, that is something that I'll have to think about. That yes, they're not gonna see exactly it the way I see it. But I know people also act on fear.
Yeah.
I don't know if there was something going on with my dad. I mean, he didn't come from a great household, and maybe he didn't feel like he raised me well, and maybe he felt like he could interject. There's a lot of questions there. Maybe he felt like he could. I heard that sometimes grandparents, if they didn't do it right with their own kids, sometimes try to do it right with these kids. You know? Yeah, they don't see my point of view at all. Somehow they thought my ex would be a better father for them, where, there was quite some evidence that he was letting boys spend the night.
So he's more lenient with
More
his
lenient.
rules.
Not an isolated case where the children, if they have a decision to make, they'll go with a more lenient parent. It's
Mhm.
it's easier. But then again, I also want to scream to my parents, this is what you thought was going to be better. This is what you thought better than me. You know me. Why weren't you standing behind me
Mhm.
and saying, hey, be more supportive, like, hey, you and your husband now are going through some things. Can I watch the kids? Can you do an extra therapy session? Y'all need to figure it out. And I do see the difference between my husband's parents now and my parents. My husband's parents saw that we were going through a hard time, and they said, "You guys need to figure it out. You have a special needs kid. You need to figure it out."
Yeah.
And my parents interjected themselves into my life and tried to make decisions for me. And that was different. It's different.
Mhm.
But when you're forced to be the person that makes that decision, you're forced to be that one without anybody else. You're it. You've got to make that decision about like what you're going to do with your life. How are you going to make it better? And I think we were doing that. We were
Yeah.
doing that.
It
We were
sounds like you
actually
guys did a lot of work to really make the relationship work and to change and to grow together. And I think that that may be the part that makes it so hard too, is like, I did all this work to heal, to make things
yeah,
work. And so that's why I want you to know that even when you do the most work, sometimes you can end up with results that you would have gotten had you done no work. And so when it comes to no contact, it's usually for safety. It doesn't mean that you're a horrible person if your kids don't speak to you. Just like your parents aren't horrible people. They did something wrong and you don't know how to repair it.
yes.
That's it. And with the kids, like at some point, what I see as a therapist is kids always miss their parents, even if they don't know they do yet, right? When they get older and they see that life is harder, a lot of times they look back and then they can see like the sacrifice. When they're younger, you make it look easy for them. You're working hard. They're like, woo, all right, mom's doing it and I'm getting what I want.
Right.
But when they get older and they're like, oh man, my mom, she worked this hard to do this. She got me this. They start to see, you know, what happened or what you did.
Exactly. At this point, with just one kid living in the house now, I feel like my nervous system has basically, and like my dad and my parents and this drama that I feel like my nervous system has really calmed down, and then it kind of makes me reflect on it. Like I was living in crisis mode for a long time.
Yeah.
This is even before the court case. It was before the child custody. I was living in crisis mode for a very long time. I feel like a different person now. I feel like a
Mhm.
different person. I feel more relaxed. I feel like I can make decisions and also know that you don't have to make a decision right away.
Yeah.
If I'm not sure about something, I can marinate on something and think it out. And that is not something that I ever was able to do before. And I mean, things happen for a reason. I don't think I'd be the person I am now if this estrangement didn't happen.
Yeah.
I feel like a different person now, but I miss my family
Yeah.
and I will always miss them. And I will just hope, for change or hope something happens. But that's how I am at this point. Yeah.
Yeah. And when people come into therapy and they're like, I miss my family and I want to make it work, I don't want to miss them like this. At times we just work out like, what do you need? What can you give up? What can you not? Like, if somebody's not sorry, can you move past it without the apology? Like, what does it take? And once you know what you need, it makes it so much easier to make a decision that works because then you'll know what to do. It's like, if I need an apology and I'm never going to get one, then some people are like, I'm never talking to them again. If you need changed behavior, what's different for them? And when it comes to your kids, like if they need something from you, what are you willing to give up? Like sometimes people are like, I should not have to apologize because I sacrificed so much for them. Why would they
Exactly.
owe me an apology? Sometimes it feels like that, right?
Yes.
And sometimes to save the relationship, people are like, "I'm sorry I hurt you."
Mhm.
You're not giving anything else up by saying, "I'm sorry I hurt you." That wasn't your intent. You didn't mean to do anything like that, but that's their experience. And so as you're navigating that, you'll have to think about, the kids too. Like if they come back, what would they want from you?
I think what would be different if any of these, I mean, my family members came back into my life, I have learned to create boundaries. And that is something that I didn't know how to do. When my parents were interjecting into my life, I could have said, "Hey, no, stop. You know, this is my life. I'm getting it together." I didn't. I just kind of let them interject. When my dad took my kids for those 3 weeks, I
Mhm.
could have showed up at their house and said, "Kids, get in the car."
Yeah, let's go. But at the time, it's hard without the boundaries. So tell me a little bit of more about like how you've been strengthening your boundaries.
Definitely, like, I have something in my head that clicks and like, "Okay, wait, somebody's." I didn't have that before, like, people just if you nice to people, people will be nice back to you. I just had this rose-colored glasses feeling, and then, now, for example, if my husband and I are getting into some tiff and he says something that's not acceptable to me, I tell him, "I don't like the way you're talking to me. This is gonna stop right here. We can revisit this later." And then I make a boundary and I'm like, I don't want to hear you ever say that way again. It's okay for you to express yourself, but you do not talk to me like that. And it gives him a chance to like reflect on that. And sometimes he comes and says, "I'm sorry. This would have never happened before therapy. I'll tell you that." And so to be able to say sorry, I mean, but it gave him a moment. I did realize the boundaries with my kids because I felt so much guilt about like the first one that was born when I never married her dad. Showered her with everything. I did realize now looking back, whenever I said a no to my kids, it was never a hard no. It was always a no. And then they always were able to kind of like turn it into a yes.
Mhm.
And I felt like, okay, you want to go there? Okay, no. And then they would say, but this. And then I would just somehow make it happen and not functioning on a hard boundary. Like, no, no, I said no. And this is because, and I would always cater to them.
Yeah.
Um, Now, if my oldest daughter came back into my life, it would be like, no, yeah, this is my line. And I never knew what my lines were before. I didn't have boundaries until this big incident happened. I
Yeah.
didn't have boundaries with anything. I didn't have boundaries with my husband. I had boundaries at work. I didn't have boundaries. And now I feel like I know where my lines are and I know when to cut it off and I know when to say no.
Yeah.
And that is very empowering. And I know that, like, also people can tell you stuff, but until you're ready to listen to it, like I've had a problem with boundaries way back, and a counselor gave me one of the broken relationships from the past. Counselor gave me read this book on boundaries. I read it and everything, but it's until it clicks,
Right.
you know? And
Mhm.
it just finally clicked. It took a while, but it finally clicked. And I feel better as a person. Like you can't get into me unless I allow you to. And then I see the safety in boundaries because these relationships probably wouldn't have been destroyed the way they are from what happened if boundaries were set into place. If I told my dad, "No, stop. You cannot do that. You cannot put your opinion in. You don't get a vote. These children didn't come out of you. You don't get a vote. I love you, Dad, but you need to step back." And I wish I had those boundaries and we probably wouldn't be in this estranged moment right now.
Boundaries are the distance between you loving yourself and another person. So that's how we look at them when we're building them. Whereas a lot of times people are scared to put boundaries because they're so scared to lose relationships.
This is it. This was it. I was scared. And I think I was seeking approval from my kids. I was seeking approval from the bad guys in the past that I dated or I was engaged with,
Mhm.
seeking approval from my parents. Like, "Oh, you did a good job. You listened to us," seeking approval from my husband, listening to him. And until sometimes the decisions, what he said weren't right, but I didn't have a voice to like say, I don't think that's the right way to go, you know? And now I do. And I think with the relationship with my husband now, when I started to make the changes in my life and started to realize and look into myself, I told him, I am a different person than what you met me as. You can either change with me or we're just not going to work because I am not the same person that you started with. And he started making changes. So that's why you teach people how to treat you, and then that gives them the opportunity to change themselves if need be. But if you keep on letting people go into, there's no hard lines and people don't know when to start making changes for themselves. You know?
Yeah, but that a lot of this happens in childhood. So a lot of it is when you're dependent on parent and their decision making, it makes it hard to make decisions. You learn to please people. So we become in this people pleasing phase where it's like, whatever goes, whatever you say.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll just, because I don't want to be problematic and I don't want to be wrong. I don't want, because not for any other reason, but I don't want to make a mistake. So yeah,
Yeah.
okay, we can do this. And then once the relationships fall apart, anytime you think about repairing them, just how are we doing it different? Like right now, you have boundaries. So you're not the same person that these kids experienced or your
Yes.
parents even before.
Yes.
And because of that, they won't be either for you. They will be
That's
different too
right.
because you can't change them, but because you're not making the same decisions, they'll be forced to change. And what I mean is like, your dad comes in and he has an opinion about something and you're like, I respect your opinion, but I'm going to do it this way. And he's like, well, I
Yeah.
don't think that's right. And you can stand on it to say, it may be wrong. I don't know, but this is what I think's best right now. And knowing you have enough self-trust that if it goes wrong, you'll be okay. It might be
Yes.
harder. You might have to work harder. You might have to do something different, but you can survive it. And that's how you keep yourself out of that survival mode because you don't have to do everything and be everything for everyone. You
Mhm.
literally get to choose for yourself.
I found that out the hard way. I was trying to be the best for everybody, the best mom for the kids and the best daughter, bringing in them food during COVID. They didn't even ask. I was just like, here's some food. I know you guys don't want to go out. I was just trying to be make a great relationship and trying to please everybody. And yes, my people pleasing has stopped.
Yeah.
It had stopped because you cannot make everybody happy. And they foster this dependence that mom will always do that or my daughter will always follow me. And also they might have a hard time accepting the new me too. If we do open the relationship again, they might not like it. I think at this time they would like to blame my husband now, like, oh, she was never like this. It's got to be him. I do see that on a lot of the blogs, blaming it on the daughter-in-law and blaming it on this and that. There might be some truth to that, but it might not be the whole truth to that.
Hmm.
When things happen, my husband now said, Joyce, your oldest daughter is not going to school. What do you want to do about it? And I said, she needs to leave. She needs to leave. I cannot take all this going on right now and her being deceptive to me. I'm getting betrayal from all sides. She needs to leave. And I made that decision. And he asked me also, what do you want to, he didn't tell me, what do you want to do with your parents? He asked me, what do you want to do with your parents? And I said, I can't talk to them. I can't talk to them anymore. For now, I can't. It's too much. Too much betrayal. Yeah. So, yeah.
So people in your position that are like, what do I do, Jess? Because I'm unhappy either way. A lot of times I always try to get somebody else like involved. We do that in this segment of the closure house where we bring people in. But even if people want a little bit more discretion to it or privacy, it's like the same therapist that helps. Sometimes they're family therapists and they'll bring family in and you can facilitate a conversation and then you can make an informed decision because without boundaries, you do more for people than you want. But instead of it just being like, I'm giving a lot away, it turns into resent. It's almost like,
Yeah.
how dare you not go to school? It's the only thing I'm asking of you.
Exactly.
I feel taken
Right.
advantage of, right? So then when somebody comes to you and says, I need an apology, you're like, I need an
Right.
apology too, right? But now you have boundaries. So now you won't give up more than you want. So when someone says, hey, can I live with you? And I'll do this, you're like, nope, nobody's coming to live with us. Nope. But
Right.
I don't mind helping you sort out what you're going to do though. Like, what are your options? And you talk to them and you empower them, right?
Yes.
So like, I always say when people are on the fence, there's so many different ways to figure out your no contact situation if you want to continue it, if you don't. but you'll know when you're ready.
Exactly.
You'll have to trust your own readiness. Just know that things could go wrong in the meantime while you're figuring it out, and how would you feel about those things that could go wrong?
Going wrong, like my parents passing away before this gets settled. That kind of weighs on me.
You know? Does it have to be resolved too? To be like, I still care about you or I still love you. I just want you to think about like what you want to get out of it. I was wondering, like, what are you most proud of yourself for?
Oh, I'm most proud. I mean, it's taken a minute, maybe like 2 years since this has happened, for me to actually know myself. I was forced to know myself. I was forced to, like, question, "Why am I like this? Why do I feel like a little girl when I'm talking to my dad
Yeah.
when I'm, like, 50 years old?
Mhm.
Why?" I'm proud of being able to solve my own problems. I'm proud of being able to make my marriage work, despite it having so many issues in the beginning. I think that has a lot to do with it. I'm proud of everything that I've done, and I'm not gonna even. And I'm proud of not being bitter about it. I mean, I'm sad, but I know some people go into this estrangement going, "I hate them. I never want to talk to them again. Mad at what they did." Instead, I'm like, I wonder what happened in my dad's life to make him like this, to
Yeah.
make him make those decisions that kind of, had to cut into my life and how to the control. What happened to my dad and his, bringing up that made him feel like he needed to do this. You know, I'm not mad at my ex. I mean, I am, but I'm not. I mean, I realize things must have happened to him. And these are not excuses for people, but I'm just kind of like, at this point, I'm proud of myself for not being bitter
Yeah.
and being open. Because if you're bitter, you're not going to be open to anything changing or healing. I'm open to healing. And I know I'm open to stepping forward. And because when bad things happen, like all the things happened all at one time, I did have a choice. I could be a very bitter, mean person, do things back and everything, but I chose not to. I chose to heal. I chose to try to be curious about why these things happened. And I chose to kind of move forward. Because with any therapist, it's almost like you could go and sit with a therapist and go, he did this, she did this, he did this. One therapist told us, okay, I can listen to all that all day long. I can listen to he did, she did, whatever, but that's not doing anything. That's just like punching a bag. What are we doing to move forward? And I'm open to the moving forward. I am. Just don't know how to do it quite yet. And I just don't know if I'm ready yet.
Yeah, I think readiness will help you a lot. And then what you just said about like, how do we move forward? Because I think that a lot of times we're like, this needs to be fixed. And sometimes some things just won't be fixed, even in the relationship. Sometimes you'll have opposing views and you'll never see eye to eye, but you just choose the love. And that will be the difference. So in my own no contact situation, what I've learned is everything that people do, it's not necessarily against me. It's for them. They do what they have to do for themselves. Sometimes it feels like it's against me, or sometimes it may be, but not every case. So for me, like I said, the way that I got through the grief was just not putting a period on the end of it. It's not over forever for me. If something changes, I will definitely, speak to my family members again, but I won't do it in an unhealthy way with nothing changing. So like
That's
first
just
I built boundaries and then I reintroduced myself to them. And that did not work for them. So for some families, that's it. That's when it works. But for me, that didn't. So I tried other things. And when those things didn't work, I just tried until I knew what I wanted to get out of it. And I knew I never would. So I decided to not. But for you, it may be very different. You may decide, okay, I just want to have my family back around because I love them. And with these boundaries, I can make it work. Right. And then, we'll talk about other ways to do that. But I think that the most empowering thing about your story is that you worked so hard on yourself to make so much work. And I'm so glad to hear that you're proud of yourself for all the things that you've done because you've done a lot.
thank you. Still in process, but like I said, always moving forward and always trying to improve myself. So, yes, I don't think the story's done yet either. I think it feels like it's done, but I don't think the story's done. And I'll leave out hope, especially for my daughters. Um, I will leave that always open. The porch light is always on.
Thank you so much, Joyce, for coming on the Closure House and sharing your story with us. In this space, closure does not always mean release. Sometimes it means holding space for the possibility of reconnection down the road. Wherever your journey leads, I hope it brings you peace and continued healing.